About what the dill pickle is pulled in through these really simple programs of the community bucket program and through the odd bruised fruit or the off peelings on the outside of a cabbage. And I think about taking in about 6 to 8 tons every year from the dill pickle, and that from that we make actually a ton of compost. That's pretty phenomenal. That's a pretty phenomenal task, and we just do that because we're pooling our efforts together. We're not dividing them; we're pooling them together. So by collecting our waste together, composting together, creating a project together, we actually amplify our the value of our waste streams, as opposed to carting it off to an industrial composter. We do it together. We see how that process is a slow and often messy process. There's some delight in that. And being part of a universal law of physics, and to come up with something so beautiful together is just exquisite and amazing. And so we do it together because we can't do it by ourselves, and we shouldn't. So we do it together. And setting up compost programs in Rio de Janeiro, in Warsaw, Poland. I've talked a lot about biourbanism in areas of Europe and the United Arab Emirates, Canada, Mexico. I've worked all sorts of places in this, and I have to tell you that Chicago's doing a really crappy job in all these issues of what we could be doing. And I think it's part of it is that culturally, as Americans, we're told to be competitive. We're told to take care of our own, and this is the wealth of our bodies living in one place really needs to be recognized. And when we start realizing that we're all just bodies in this time together, happen to be in this place, that we could all be working together, I still think we have a long way to go with that. But we're not doing well on any level. It's part of our economic structure. It's part of our culture. A lot of things that systemically oppress us are also kind of conspiring against us participating in this really real way as community, as earthlings, here and now. Is not a term that I use because I think it's been watered down and co-opted by capitalism, because I think when they originally came up with that term in the 80s during the summit, it was really about like, how do we connect in a better way, and think about these things and perform these things and actually redevelop some behaviors. And now it feels like a marketing ploy, or it feels like something that's been grabbed by capitalism, and people are looking for these extractive measures and ways of measuring sustainability through LEED certification, through such and such. Products they buy having bamboo flooring as opposed to wood flooring, and I really don't. I think that there is some value in that, but I would argue that the most so-called sustainable people and cultures I know are just people who connect, that remove the middleman. It's not about what they buy. It's about just how they are in their communities, in their bodies, what they participate in, what they won't participate in, all that. So I participate in the Dill Pickle Co-op because it's a cooperative structure. And I come from, I'm older, and so I've seen how cooperatives have changed over time, but I still believe in that as a fundamental difference in how we build economies than straight capitalism. Because capitalism is always looking at things outside of ourselves. and cooperative is built on relationship. It's about our relationship to each other, our relationship to place, our relationship to neighborhoods, our relationship beyond our neighborhoods, connecting with other neighborhoods, connecting with other citizens of the city or of the world. And so, yeah, the most is, sustainability is simply about connecting. A gigantic screen, but I just wanted to. This is what we saw. It's very biologically rich, and all those pieces of eggshell are calcium for the soil for later. Calcium, and so a lot of things that are still in the screenings are important foods, but they're foods that come later. So in compost, what I do, this is some rocks fell in here when it fell over. But this is what it looks like right out of the pile. And it's a brown color compared to kind of a black or gray color. And that's because this is only organic material. This is only organic material, and soil is mineral material. It comes from rock. It comes from decomposed rock and some of this, but it has a completely different character. So I always think about compost as being vitamin and soil as being mineral. So plants need both, just like we do. All bodies need both. So it's usually this beautiful 80% cacao color. This beautiful brown color is the sign of a good compost. And when you see is a bunch of little bits in here of food waste that take a little bit more time to break down. All the easy ones have been broken down already. Okay? So this compost is about 6 months old. So I get food waste in buckets. I mix that with sawdust and straw, sometimes some wood chips, and I layer it like a lasagna, and I let the microbes and the rain do its business in those piles, and then I haul it out like this, and I can use it in raw state in a garden like this, or I can screen it out if I want a finer product. Compost is a very easy food. They're vitamins. They're a very easy food for plants to digest. And they're also, in here are millions, billions, gazillions of organisms that are interacting with the plant roots and the fungi in the soil. And what they're doing is they're grabbing those minerals and going out in the soil and sourcing those minerals and bringing them back to the plants. Because plants are localized. They can't move, but the soil microorganisms can move things around for them. So by delivering compost to the soil, we're actually making not only that soil more alive, but for those plants to be able to source their minerals better. So microorganisms have a relationship with plants, not just because they're there, but because plants, when they photosynthesize and make the sugars that build their own bodies, because plants are the only kingdom that can make food for themselves. Everybody else has to go out and get it. They can make it for themselves. So they build these sugars that build their bodies. They source minerals out of the ground in this particular way, but they build these sugars, and they use only 60% of those sugars for their bodies. And the rest of the 40%, they pump down through their roots, and they exude out through their roots like juices, like sugary juices, to attract all of these microorganisms who come to drink those juices, and they leave the minerals for those plants. They're in symbiotic relationship. It's a reciprocal relationship. So on most city soils, we've compacted the soil. With our vehicles, with our feet, with our construction, we've compacted and broken it up so that water and oxygen can't get to these microorganisms that are existing in the soil, and we destroyed that relationship. They don't have air to breathe, they can't get water to them, and they end up dying. So adding compost is not only food and not only microorganisms, but it makes the soil more workable. And it creates those air spaces, and it creates the water spaces for soil to really be all that can be, to absorb the extra rain, the storm water. I don't have any flooding basements here. All my gutters are disconnected and going straight to landscape. It's because I have good soils, and I have a lot of plants that are thriving in there that are going to absorb that extra storm water and circulate it through their bodies. I also have a lot of bird life here that creates a lot of enjoyment, and a lot of insect life here. And if we go down, if we look at that side yard, it's very vegetated, so that would be a good shot over there. We can do that. We live in a living, thriving habitat. That urban habitat isn't just the infrastructure that we build, but it's the biological life that supports us being here. The clean water, the clean air, the clean soil. And if soil is more breathable, more open, more full of microbial life, it's going to absorb and work with water. It's going to clean that water. It's going to, when contaminated air falls into it, that contaminated air can be digested and filtered also by soil. So this is what our feet are on top of all the time. And whether we have 3 inches of sidewalk below us or not, we're on Earth. And so I believe that we can do better by it. So receiving food waste, especially organic food waste, is like a beautiful treat for all these plants. And again, I mix that with carbons, sawdust, straw, wood chips, and I mix all that together to have a nice balance, to have this chemical reaction called compost to happen. So I wanted to show you this too. And this is just decomposed wood chips. And it smells really earthy, but these are wood chips that were big chips of wood that have slowly decomposed onto themselves through the act of fungi or mushrooms. So a lot of times I'll add something like this to the nitrogen that comes from the buckets, because it's full of fungal threads or mycelium that then help break down the more persistent things like artichoke stalks and on the tops of pineapples and other kind of hard things that come into compost. It'll help, the fungi will also help break those things down. And so if you can tell a good compost because, or things that are going towards that, is they smell like really sweet earth. And if you were to smell this, either of these things, both the compost or the composting rotting wood chips, they smell like sweet earth. And when I work with children who have never really had a sense of what soil is, and they just think about soil as dirt, when we give them soil that comes from a city and doesn't smell like anything, we give them really good soil that has a lot of microbial life, or we give them some compost, when they pick it up, they're like, oh, this feels good, this smells good, because it's in our DNA that we know when it's good soil. Even if we've never grown a thing in our life, we know when it looks right, and we know when it doesn't, if we just take the time to look at it. Anyway, that's a lot, David, but so I come from a rural area, and when I came to Chicago 35 years ago, after I just come from working in a year in South America, in Peru, I was like, what are people doing? Like, look at this. I'm picking up needles, I'm picking up rotten t-shirts, I'm picking up plastic bags. Um, I couldn't believe broken glass, just sifting and picking up every little piece of broken glass just to make a garden happen. I just couldn't believe what people were doing to soil, which was always taught to me as being, it's fundamental. And then I saw a lot of people mistreating each other too, or not being able to talk to each other. And I'm like, man, if we just cared about soil, we'd probably start caring about each other too. So this is really, creating compost is not soil. It's a way of helping our soils. It's a way of giving air and space to soil. It's a way of delivering microbes and easy foods. It's a way of helping plants source their minerals through the microbes that are inside of here. So compost is the vitamin, soil is the mineral. The soil cricket, see how hard this is? This is a soil knife with a very sharp tip. It's really hard and it takes a lot of effort. Also, this is, compared to the compost, this is something that takes a lot of effort to get crumbly and soft. This does not, it's also dry to the touch, and it should be moister. And this is very dry, very compacted soil, has very low nutrients, it has minerals in it, but it doesn't have nutrient. They're like rock. It's like a rock. It's like a texture of a really dry brownie. And I like my cake and brownies nice and soft. And this is like so hard, actually. It's ridiculous how hard this is. And this is why we compost, because this takes a lot of effort to plant in, and a lot of, I mean, that is without life. And this is how we treat our parkways. We throw garbage on them. This could be contaminated, and it's hard as anything. It's almost like, listen to that. Oh my goodness. Let's love on this. Ugh. Okay.